Okay, we're live. Hey, everybody. Sorry for that little delay. We can't start without our coffee, and I had to rush down and get a few things set up, but this way people can get settled in. So I'm really excited. Oh, 1 second. I got audio coming in from somewhere else. Give me a second.
I've been there.
Let's see. Okay, we should be good now. So I had YouTube on and yeah, on a different tab. Okay, so back to it. We are going to be doing some live coding. We're going to be comparing React and Svelte. And I know Aditya is going to be using SvelteKit, but we're going to throw in that little change here in a second. We'll talk about that. But the whole idea is to show this without any steps missed. I do have some videos coming up where we're going to be comparing these, same project built with 2 or 3 different frameworks. We'll get into more videos like this on the channel, but today we just want to show that raw code. We want to talk about it, and we just want to go through the entire process. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to set up a project. We're going to go through about 4 to 5 steps here where we'll set up a Hello World app in React, then we'll do the same in Svelte, and then we're going to go ahead and add in some page routing in React and then in Svelte. So that's what we're going to be doing today. It's going to be a lot of fun. So we're about to get things set up. But Aditya, I do have some questions for you before we jump into it, because we originally titled this SvelteKit, and you're going to be using, we titled it SvelteKit, but I understand that, we want to change that to Svelte. But why are you using SvelteKit? Can you talk about that a little bit and give an introduction to your side of things as I get things set up?
Sure, not a problem. Well, hi everyone. Thanks a lot for joining in. So I know that we're doing a comparison with React here, and so when we talk about SvelteKit, it's often talked in the context of SSR enabled frameworks. When I look at SvelteKit, however, and especially not just for me, but also with how the Svelte team has been placing SvelteKit. SvelteKit is supposed to be the one first-party meta framework for the Svelte ecosystem to achieve routing, state management, um, SSR, CSR, anything effectively. So the thing is, SvelteKit is going to give you the flexibility to build both client and server-side rendered applications. It has a great developer experience as well while you actually do it. And at this point, it really is the one first party solution with routing. So it's become the de facto recommended option by the Svelte team as well as the community today. This isn't to say that you can't use Svelte without SvelteKit. You very well still can use it along with Wheat. However, the developer experience of SvelteKit just feels a lot better at this point, and it's going to, like, you can achieve both the things either way. It's going to be a lot less effort. It'll be a lot quicker for most people working. So that's particularly why I will be preferring SvelteKit here at this point.
So it sounds like a lot. It sounds a lot like Next.js and React, where even React recommends Next.js
Pretty
for a lot of
much.
things.
Yeah. The way, Next.js leverages React, and you can build some really powerful stuff with Next as well. Or if you're looking at other frameworks as well, like Remix and so on, SvelteKit right now is the one major option for Svelte that we have today.
Got it. Okay. So to confirm, though, you're going to be using CSR, though, when you're using SvelteKit. So there's an option just like in Next.js, you can kind of alternate between the two. And you said even Svelte recommends SvelteKit for page routing, because we discussed this a little bit, because one of the things we wanted to talk about was routing. And with page routing, that's kind of the recommended method. Is it to the point of where it's like almost unusable, or is it just like, hey, we've improved it so much that we just prefer you just use SvelteKit for it? Because I'm curious myself, as somebody who's used Svelte only 2 years ago, like once, I'm trying to get into it. So I like a lot of these questions are actually just purely my own.
Absolutely. That's a very fair question. Now, there are a few other options for routing. It's not the only one that's actually usable. But all right. So have you looked at how Next.js is a file-based routing system where you'll have a directory structure, and each directory acts as a route. That's basically what we've got with SvelteKit today. And so it's been simplified extensively at this point. There are some other routing libraries that are available that can still be used, but for a number of folks here, some of our developers might also be beginners. I know I've been a more recent web developer, and I think it's probably the method I've taken to the most as well through my learning journey. It is the only first party solution, that being said. So while there are routing libraries, all of them are community maintained. And while the community has done a wonderful job with those, SvelteKit is constantly receiving updates and support from the core Svelte team. So it's really the only first party solution that we've got there.
Got it. Okay. Well, nice. Well, I'm excited to give this a shot. So as I begin setting things up, I'm about to share my screen, but I did want to say hello to the audience. We have Kushboo's here. I see Tessa. Eldado's already in here. Nishant. Everyone's saying hello. Awesome to see everybody here. Really excited. Also, while I'm doing this, say where you're at in the world too. That's always exciting. I love to see where our viewers are from. We have developers literally everywhere. We're global, so I love it. I think it's gonna be a lot of fun to start interacting. And we will have a session where we'll answer questions and we'll try to jump in between. I want to keep the flow going though. So this stream will be posted after, or the recording will be. So we want to make sure it flows, but everything's relevant to whatever we're setting up here. So give me a second. Let me move everything here. And let me share the correct screen. So it always takes a second. Okay, and we'll make sure we're zoomed in too. But what I'm going to do is start off with the Hello World app. So we're going to start from scratch. Aditya, you'll follow along in a minute, and I'll just kind of transition to you. But I'm going to use Vite to set up a React application. So there's the Create React app that we can use. Vite is something that I've just started to kind of default to, prefer it. So let's start with React here. So the first thing I'm going to do is npm create Vite. And we're going to kick things off, and we'll just say hello world. So I'm going to call this live stream. We'll just give it a simple name. That's going to be our live stream app. We're going to select React. And can you see everything? Let's make sure we're zoomed in. We're going through the defaults. We won't be using TypeScript today. We're using JavaScript, and that set up my boilerplate code. And let's just quickly review our React application. Go to live stream, ignore all my files on my desktop. I have a very messy desktop, working on countless projects at the same time. And let's go ahead and just run our server now. So we're inside of our application. We've got the folder structure here. Everything starts at app.jsx here. We have some boilerplate code that we're about to clean up and some CSS, and that's about it. So to run our server, actually the first thing we want to do is if we're using Vite here, we want to just go ahead and run npm install the basic packages here that get things kicked off for us. So we'll do that, and we'll just go ahead and do npm run dev. Okay. So we're on port 5173. Let's get that going. And this is what we have right now. So first thing I'm going to do is just say hello world, and then we want to move on to Aditya. I'm more excited about learning your stuff here. So let's just split these screens. The beginning always takes a second to set up here. So it starts off a little slow, then we just start going through it. So I can get rid of a few of these files here. We'll leave that app.css import. Let's go ahead and just get rid of everything here. And inside of an h1 tag, I'll just say hello world. And I also want to get rid of all the boilerplate CSS because we do have our own CSS that we're going to work with. So for now, I'm just going to go ahead and remove everything from app and main or index.css. And let's just see our application. After I save that, you know, the funny thing is I always run into the most bugs setting up the core stuff like in the very beginning, like right now. Okay, we're using our state, that's why. But this is usually where most of the bugs kick in. Okay, hello world. We see that, and that's all it was. So we just used Vite to set it up, made some installs, cleaned up a few things, and we rendered that out. Aditya, do you want to share your screen now and kick things off on your side?
Yes.
We should eventually challenge who takes longer too. Make a little comparison.
So I'm just going to do one thing here. I'm going to shift StreamYard to the right so that I have my working setup in front of me.
Good
And let
idea.
me bring up my screen now.
Okay, I need to pin the comments on all the steps here so everyone knows exactly what we're going to be doing at each step here. So right now it's hello world. Then I believe we're moving on to page routing, but I need to pull up my own notes. And let me remove my screen for now. Okay, as Aditya sets that up. So I see you've shared. Are you ready for me to add that to the screen?
All good. Yes.
All right, there we go. Got a cleaner desktop than me.
So I just have larger display is what it is.
Can you
I
zoom
wouldn't
in
say
real quick
cleaner
too?
desktop. Sorry?
Can you zoom in real quick too? Yeah, just to make sure
I
everyone can
am
see that.
just, yes.
Beautiful.
So I'm just going to do a quick thing. I will, well, enter my desktop. That's where I'll create my project directory. Now, just as we saw with React, I am also going to use npm to create the project. But while SvelteKit does use Vite, we don't need Vite to set it up. So what I'll do is I'll use the npm, the Svelte create tool that is already available. And I will call my project live stream as well. Let me just maximize that. So the moment I go ahead and do that, I have an option to pick from a demo application, a skeleton project, and a library project. I'll pick a skeleton project for now because it's the easiest to get up and running from scratch. The demo project will have a good number of features already built in. Or Dennis, what do you say? Should I go ahead with the skeleton or the demo app? Which one would you prefer seeing?
I would say let's keep it as raw as possible. I know you're going to get some boilerplate in here, but whatever gets us through that stage, is the boilerplate going to have like too much configuration for us that we're going to ignore? Because I would rather
It'll be
see.
unnecessary boilerplate. Yeah.
Okay, I would say let's not do it. Let's go from scratch because I want to see everything.
Perfect. Cool. So I'll pick a skeleton project for now. I am also using JavaScript, so I don't need type checking for this one. I'm just going to keep that as no. There are a few additional options which let us pick, if we want to already add a linter, prettier, or testing tooling. We will, I will actually probably select prettier and ESLint. I do normally use that before I push code. So the moment I do that, it's created a project already for me. So I am quickly going to go ahead and open that up in my VS Code. Now, the moment I do that, as you see, we've got a little project structure set up already. Because it's a skeleton project, it will seem a lot more bare bones, but we've got all our packages up and ready. As you see, we've got Vite here as well. Like I mentioned earlier, so SvelteKit also uses Vite to set up a server and for hot module replacement for hot reload essentially and other things going forth. We will look at the source folder, which will show us our only route that is ready, which is a welcome to SvelteKit route. I'm gonna get this up and running first, just install and get things going, and after that we'll make an edit or so and see whether that makes a difference.
We had a question. I know we already addressed it early on, but we're talking about why use SvelteKit instead of Svelte. Aditya already addressed those, so the recording will be posted. We can just summarize those maybe. It was a lot for page routing, for SSR. A lot of stuff comes into it. Yeah.
It really does. I think my first project with Svelte actually was very much a Vite plus Svelte project, but the more I use Svelte, the more um, attracted I am towards the same. So as you see, we've got our little welcome project up and ready. I'm just going to make a change here. Welcome to the AppWrite YouTube. The moment I do that, we see our change up here as well.
Yeah, let's make sure to zoom into that real quick, Aditya. Sorry, I hate interrupting,
Yeah.
but There we go.
Not a
Perfect.
problem.
So you got live reloading, the changes made, and this was in what file again?
So when we went to the source folder, within routes, there is a plus page.svelte file. The way Svelte's router works is we've got a page, a file style router. And so within the routes directory, the first page.svelte is going to be our index page. And within that, every single directory we create will effectively act as a different route on our application.
If I'm not mistaken, isn't it folder-based routing? If you're creating a folder and then everything starts from a page.svelte, so you have your entry point.
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
Sorry about that. Yes, so this is our index, and then if suppose I create a new route, right? Like for example, if I just call it hello for now, and I add another page dot svelte, let's just say we'll just call it hello world for now. By the way, I know there are a couple of deadlines. That's not a problem. That's more of VS Code configuration issue at this point. I'm going to restart VS Code while you're working on some of the other stuff after. So it's going to sort it out. It's not actually an issue with the code itself or the project. It's a VS Code issue at this point.
Got it.
But yeah, so I set up, I added a new folder, hello, right? So the moment I go there, we've got hello world. So each folder there is going to act as a new route, and then we'll have our Svelte files, our load functions, and anything necessary within those.
Got it. Okay, awesome. So we were going to jump into that in the next step, but that's perfect. We can at least summarize that right now. So for anybody that may have missed that, because I'm learning this for the first time, it's a lot like Next.js in the sense where you create the folder, whatever that folder name was, in this case, hello, and then it was page.svelte. That was the actual page content, but the route in the URL was hello. So it was localhost and then /. So the folder is what gives it that file name. So we're going to jump back into React right now. We're not going to be working with file or folder based routing, because with Next.js you can do you can use a pages router or the app router, which gives you either file or folder based routing. We're going to be using something called React Router DOM. So as I switch over, I see we have people in the audience. A lot of people tuned in here. Let's make sure we're subscribed to the AppRight YouTube channel and make sure you like this stream. I mean, you don't have to like it, but if you want to support us, we would appreciate it. So helps us get some insight and helps push this video forward. So definitely make sure we do that. And we are going to be watching the chat. So I love the questions. Feel free to keep asking those. Okay, so we're switching over to React now. So let's go ahead and make sure everything's set up. And let me open up a new terminal, because with React, we're relying on an external dependency, and this is React Router DOM. And I personally, my only issues with React Router DOM is that they make so many changes so frequently that every time there's a change, things aren't backwards compatible, so it gets a little bit ridiculous. That's why a lot of people do like the next routing with the folder-based system, because you don't actually have to set this up. With React, we do have to use an external package. So this is React Router DOM. And let's see, we got to create a count, Aditya, for how many times I say, let's go ahead and that phrase. Because I think in a 60-second period where I made the last short on our YouTube channel, somebody ran it through this application where it does like a phrase count 8 times in 60 seconds. Now, to be fair, it was a short, which means a lot of stuff was cut up. So they clearly cut it anytime I was saying that specific phrase, or I had to put that in because that's when transitions were happening. But I do repeat a lot of phrases, which I'm working on. I know you and I have talked about this before. Okay, so page routing. So what we want to do is route some pages and then use some dynamic routes. And a dynamic route is something like if we click on a note, we want to be able to change what note actually gets output based on that dynamic URL. Maybe that's going to be a UID or a slug. So a page route that's always changing. So let's go ahead and, hey, there we go. There's one. Let's go ahead and, I'm never going to forget that. Okay, inside of app.jsx, this is where I'm going to structure everything. So I'm going to nest all my routes within here. So this component right here will be taking care of my layout and my routing, and then all the other components will actually take care of the pages. So we need to import the browser router inside of React, and we need to import routes and an individual route, and we'll use these in a second. But from here, inside of source, what I'm going to do is go ahead and create a new folder and then a couple of files. So we'll just call these pages, and then we'll do notes.jsx, and then I'll also create a note.jsx. So for the individual note, and then what was the other page? I'm missing it right now. There was notes and note.
The form.
Form, right. Okay, let's go ahead and do that. Form.jsx. Okay, so there's this extension or this VS Code plugin that I can use that gives me the boilerplate code to a component in React. It's called React Redux ES7 code snippet. So I can just type in React arrow function component exported. So I can just type in the first letter of every word and it'll generate this component for me. So it's a lot quicker, gets things set up. So I'm going to create the form, and then we'll do the same for our note page and then our actual notes page. So that'll be like the home page. And I want to render these out. So we'll go back into app.jsx, and we're just going to import each component here. So we'll import note, and then notes, and then finally the form, and we'll just route these. Okay, so inside of app here, what I'm going to do is use these empty fragments, and I'm going to change this to our browser router. And we're going to nest everything inside of routes. So routes, the routes component will specify, or it'll tell us that there are going to be individual routes within here. So we're just going to go ahead and nest these inside of it. So we add our browser router, then the actual routes, and then we specify each page here. So this is how you do this with React Router. There's a few different ways actually to do this, but this is the way that I'm going to stick to. And we're going to specify a route, which we need to specify the component that we want to render out when a certain path is met. So let's start with notes. We'll throw in the component, and then the actual path is going to be just /. So that's going to be the home page. So when we go to just localhost 5173, this is what renders out. Then I can duplicate this and say that this is going to be for the note page, which we can grab this component right here. And we're going to add in a dynamic URL. And how we can do this is we can simply go ahead and add colon and an ID. So whatever we specify this path, this is how we can access this in the next page. So this ID can be whatever we want it to be. It can be any kind of string value. So once we set that in, we can access it and then make a request to get an individual note. And by the way, we are going to be using AppWrite as a backend. Aditya and I already have this set up. So one of the steps in here after routing is going to be to make a request and actually fill in some real data. So I'll grab form here, and then this will just be add. So we have our home page, a note, and then the add page. And let's go ahead and save that. Okay, so we see our first page. If I can zoom in here. Oh, I'm maxed out at 500%. Okay, so we'll add in note, and then let's just throw in an ID. Give me a second. Let's see what's going on here. Did I save everything? Oh, we'll just do note like that. That's what it was. Okay, so you see how we have the note here. So the number right here, I can't really zoom in. So we just have it in, we have a random number right here that we can change. So whatever we put in here, that'll still render out the page. And what I could do is to actually get that value, I can go into note here. And from React Router DOM, we're going to call a hook called use params. And this will allow us to actually get values from the URL itself. So in here, we'll just go ahead and grab the ID value from use params. And this is a hook that React Router DOM gives us. And what I'm going to do to make sure this is visible is we're going to render out this ID dynamically right here. So we can actually see it. I can type in any number. I can type 1, 2, 3. I can even type in a string like Dennis. So that's the value. That's the page here. And then we have our form page. Oh, it was add. And everything keeps autofilling. Okay. So that's it for page routing. We just added some pages and then some dynamic routes, and we want to jump into Svelte now. And I'll answer some questions if anyone has any as we switch over to Aditya.
Perfect. So I think we already talked a little bit about routing in SvelteKit here at least, which tends to leverage folders for our different routes that we're going to have. I'm just going to remove the hello route for now. We leave the page.svelte in the meantime. But actually, I'll tell you what. So I'm going to introduce a new type of file before we kind of get into that, which is the layout.svelte. The layout.svelte file helps us define exactly how the layout of pages will be within um, our routes here. And so any child route can have its own layout, but if we don't have a layout within child routes, it automatically takes it up from the parents. And this is going to be convenient for some of the things we're going to be doing later. But this way, if we need to set up any CSS, that is often done in the layout .svelte file, which I know we'll be doing later. So a little preemptive, but it's going to help for sure. We then add, well, our slot component, which is a Svelte specific component that helps define any content that will be going within the layout. So anything we have in the page.svelte is going to be within our slot here. And this is particularly helpful if you need to add components like navbars and headers. So you can define the navbar in a single go within your layout and not have to do that every single time you create a new route, which is handy for sure. Now, the other thing that I'm going to do is create a companion for this layout, which will be a layout.js file plus layout.js. The reason I'm doing this is because, as promised, I am going to be only running this application as a client-side rendered app. And so the way we set that is by marking CSR as true within a layout.js file. Now, with Svelte, you can do that for each route, or if you have only a single parent layout, you can set it once there. And as the layout.svelte files go, this also trickles down. So this way, our route will be client-side rendered. Now, we already saw how to create, well, our index page. I am going to remove some of what we have here and just leave notes as our heading here as well. And I will create a new route that we have note. Now, when we work with slugs, particularly page slugs or parameterized inputs for Svelte endpoints, the way we do that is, now, Note itself can be its own endpoint as well, right? So I'm going to create an additional endpoint within this or another folder within the Note folder, which will say slug. And so within this, what I do next is create a page.js file. Now, the page.js acts as a companion to any page.svelte. The benefit of this is that this contains our load functions and, of course, any other constants we need to mark, like our CSR and SSR constants that can also be done in a page.js file. With SvelteKit particularly, what we do is we do get our parameters through this slug that we have. So what I'm going to do here is I am going to return our slug to our page.svelte for this particular endpoint. And what I will do there is, so I'll just call this slug for now. And we'll return params.slug. Params is something we took as a parameter here already. So when I go ahead and I create a page.svelte file for us, I'm going to create a script tag. For any Svelte file, your general setup's going to have your script tag, it'll have your HTML, and you can have component level styles. We don't need the style for now, but what I will do here is I will get our data from the load function. One cool thing about Svelte is that if you mark export let data and you open that up at the start of the script within a page.svelte file, it is automatically reserved for the load function data that we have. And so ideally, if you do need to use a variable within your Svelte page and you have a load function as well, do not use data for something else. This is going to be handy for a number of the beginners we have. But yes, once we have data, what's going to happen is that we can just use any information returned from the load function within this. So
I have some
when I go
questions
ahead,
when you have a second, Aditya.
just a second there.
Sure.
So the moment I, I set up data.slug, and yes, you can directly use any of the variables you have accessible here using our curly braces within the HTML. That is one way SvelteKit does make life a little easier for all of us. But so now, if did I stop my?
No, you're still good.
I need to save.
Oh
no, I was just thinking about my project itself, but I hadn't saved anything there. So when I go to Note and I also type 123, I see my slug data accessible.
Nice. So I can't see the URL, but just to be clear, that's coming from notes, plural, or just note? How did you set that up? So, and that's where I have some questions whenever you're ready for those.
I set up Note here at the moment. So within Note, we have another folder which is set up as, it's called slug, but it's slug within square brackets.
Yeah.
This is a special type for SvelteKit particularly. Any route where you do need a slug, the way you'd set it up is you'd create a folder, and within that you'd create this specific slug folder which will automatically provide you the slug data within your load function there. So if I do want something else within Note, by the way, that is very much possible. I can do that as well. The only thing I have to do there is if I create another page.svelte, for example, and I close off slug there, this can act as its own page. That is very much possible. So this particularly actually becomes very convenient when you might have just your web page within the node. Like suppose you need a page within the node and you only want to keep server functions within a slug. It helps maintain that separation as well when necessary. That is one way a number of people use this. But so you can actually use both. There is flexibility to use both the original parent directory and the child slug directory that we've got.
Got it. And we still have our notes route too? The notes plural? Or did we delete that? Or did you rename it?
So I haven't created the notes one yet. But notes is just going to contain our note, right?
So we have our note, like the individual note, but I'm talking about like the note list, right? Like the basically that's going to be like our home. Well, actually, I just realized no, that's going to be our page. That's going to be our.
That's the index page, right?
Yes, that's my mistake. Okay, so just to kind of recap again, as someone who's learning from you right now, this is very new to me. I know I mess with the AppWrite console. I see the code, but I still have to kind of try to make sense of it. With this, you created your layout in order for all the child components to be able to take in the CSS and so on, because otherwise those would have to be individually added. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and then we already have our homepage. In order to create the dynamic route, you just created a note folder, which would take you to /note, and then slug, which would go ahead and give you that dynamic URL, and then you access that with that keyword. So slug can, in theory, be anything you want it, right? It doesn't have to be called slug, the parameter.
We do keep it slug particularly as how SvelteKit recommends this. I do believe this is a reserved name for SvelteKit's routing system.
I see.
Because that is also how the documentation particularly refers it as such.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense. Sounds good. Okay, so that takes care of the routing. Now what we need to do is we need to call a backend. So Aditya and I are both going to use the same backend. We've already set up an AppWrite backend. I set up some environment variables off screen here. And what I'm going to do is quickly just connect to that AppWrite backend. Aditya, if you want to set yours up before mine, or as I'm doing this, this would also work, and then we can just kind of summarize what you did there, make sure the certain details are hidden, and then we can kind of jump to you. So both of us aren't setting up the AppWrite backend, but I'll at least take care of that part for now. So let's go ahead and jump into mine. Let's see, where's my screen? Oh, I'm sharing everything. Okay. All right, we're back to my screen. So I'm also going to import some styling. So what I'm going to do is also bring in a GitHub repo. This is what our application is going to look like. So we have our notes page where we're going to render out individual notes, and then the actual note detail, and then just a form. So let's do some housekeeping as we're transitioning here. So in order to connect to my AppWrite backend from the source folder, I'm just going to create an appwrite.js folder or file. I'll run an install here. We'll just install the AppWrite Web SDK. This stuff's not particular to Svelte or React, but it is going to give you that full flow here. And for my AppWrite account, this is what Aditya is also setting up at the moment. I'm just going to go ahead and bring in my client instance and my database. We're going to set that up and then set up my client. That's going to be new client. And when we're setting up an AppWrite client, we just need the endpoint and the project. So this is going to be the project ID and then the actual endpoint to our console, or well, I guess either on AppWrite Cloud, the console there, or if you have a local instance, this is where that would be set up. And I also need to set up some environment variables. So I'm going to set up my project ID, set that, then my database ID. That's a weird way to spell database. Okay, database. It's really difficult for me to talk and type. Database ID. And what I'm going to do is import these from, let's see, I forgot how to do that import. So we're doing import.meta.vite and then vite project underscore ID. So again, just some boilerplate here. And the next one's going to be my endpoint. And I set up my environment variables in a file right here. So I'm not going to show those because that's my information. And in theory, somebody can just access those right now as we're live coding, and that wouldn't be fun. So this is why I'm hiding that information. And then also, obviously, when you're posting to GitHub, you want to make sure this stuff is hidden, especially if you accidentally post it to public. I've done that before. I actually published an AWS API key for my S3 bucket and my RDS database. And then I woke up to a $5,000 bill one morning. So definitely not making that mistake again. Okay, so we have collection notes. So that's good. So we have a database, or we have a database called prod, and then a collection called notes. And that's what I set up. So I had to get all those IDs from my AppWrite instance. And then this is where we can set up our project ID right there, and then the endpoint. And let's hope all this works. So from here, I just need to set up my database. That's going to be new databases, and then we're going to pass in the AppWrite client, and then we're just going to export this, and we'll start making that first request. So we're going to export DB, and I want to export my project ID and my database ID. Okay, so from here, the first step would be to render out a list of notes here. So what we'll do is jump into our notes.js file. And here I'm going to make a request. So what I'm going to use is I'm going to use useEffect within React. It's basically a hook that allows us to tap into React's lifecycle methods. So it gets called when a component first renders, when a component unmounts from the DOM. So it basically gets called when these things happen. And this is when we're going to trigger our first call. I know there's tons of different ways to do this in React, but we're going to stick to just doing all of this within the component. And we're going to make that request. Once we get that data, we're going to loop through all those notes and then render those out right here. So we'll need to import that. So we'll import useEffect here and then use state. And Aditya, I guess I'll speak directly to you. How familiar are you with React, by the way? I'm curious about that.
I'm able to catch up. I won't say I have extensive experience with it, but I think I'm getting an understanding to at least some sense.
Got it. Okay. Well, in that case, I'll go ahead.
use state particularly is something that's not a problem. Can you go over use effect once again?
Use effects. So essentially, just like in Svelte, you're working with a single page application, I guess, unless you're working with Svelte Kit and things are server side rendered, but the DOM needs to update, right? So like when you switch a page, when something changes, React is listening to these events. So you have the first load, so use effect will get called on the first load. Then when something changes, so let's say we update like a state. So right here we have notes. Whenever this updates, use effect will get called again. It's going to listen to this change and it's going to say, okay, we're mounting the component, we're unmounting the component, and then we're switching pages. So it's listening to all these events. So this is where I can call these updates. So when a page first loads, this will get triggered. When it unloads, this will also get triggered too. Does that make sense? Like it's a life cycle methods. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that makes sense for sure. I know at least for functions we need to run after the DOM has just been mounted, we've got the on mount
it's the same
lifecycle function. So I guess that's effectively what it's trying to achieve as well.
It's exactly it. Yep.
Perfect.
Yeah. Yeah, it's always good to give you context into what you understand. That's how I learn a lot. I'll like tap into, okay, this is how I know it. Is this similar to that? It helps me really get the idea.
Yeah.
So in here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a function called nodes, and then I'm going to call it on use effect. And the reason why I added this dependency array is because anytime we update our state, let's say we get some data and we update our current state, use effect will get called. Well, in here, I can add this dependency array to tell it, hey, only get called on the first load or only get called when this specific state updates. So I add an empty dependency array because what will happen is if I go ahead and update a node, use effect will get called again. And then what does use effect call? Well, use effect is going to call get nodes. Get nodes will update the state and it'll just go into an infinite loop. So this is why I also added an empty dependency array. So what is use effect dependent on? These are the dependencies that trigger it. So key note right there, make sure that that's empty. So from here, we'll just go ahead and make that request to AppWrite. And I'm going to import some stuff here. So we're going to import our database that we just set up from our appwrite.js file. And we'll need our database ID and our collection ID. And this is where I'll find out if I set this up right. And I just realized I need to export the collection as well. So collection notes, we'll bring this into notes here. It's always so fun to live code and get all these little mess ups. Okay, so we import those in from AppWrite. We simply want to call db.listDocuments, and we're going to pass in the database that we want to tap into. So we already have that set up, our database ID and our collection ID. And I'll just fix this indentation just to make this look cleaner. And that'll give us, or that should give us the nodes here. And then once we get that information back, we're just going to go ahead and call set notes, update the state, and we'll throw in response.documents, I believe. Yeah, that should do it. And at this point, what I could do is just console this out. So let's just see that it worked. Okay, so inside of notes, once that actually gets opened up, looks like I have some kind of mistake here. So let's see, properties undefined of Vite project ID. So I'm going to hide my screen right now, make sure my environment variables are set up, and then I'll be back in a second. So give me a second to hide this. We'll remove that. Not making that mistake again of exposing the variables. And I'm assuming you're all set up on your end?
I am doing that at the moment as well. I did install the AppWrite repository and I've got my environment set up at least. So should be quick, but I can show exactly what I'm doing here at the moment.
Sure. Yeah. While I'm setting this up, just give me a second. You go ahead and share yours. I'll add yours to screen.
Yeah. So at the moment, what I've done is I have installed the AppWrite repository, the AppWrite package. Sorry, I have installed the AppWrite package particularly. And so, of course, to use our database, which we will be doing through this, we do need our endpoint. I think for the endpoint particularly, I let that be as a literal within my project as well. But for the project ID, for our database ID and for our collection ID, I've set up my environment here at the moment. I have an example file for that as well. The reason I've got the public underscore prefix here, we've got a public prefix here, is because with SvelteKit particularly, one cool thing they've done is they've actually allowed access to environment variables in a number of different manners. You can either statically load it or dynamically load them. Statically would mean that your environment variables are pulled in at the time of build because Svelte does use a compiler. What dynamically would do is it would allow you to load them into your application at runtime. And then the other thing we've got here is they've got public and private environment variables on both of these. So public variables need to be prefixed with the public underscore prefix because these are designatedly only like these are designatedly available on um, our client side as well. These can be publicly exposed. Because SvelteKit also allows server only functions, if you do not use this prefix, SvelteKit would not allow you to load them onto any client side uh, rendered code. So I have the public prefix there as well. And what I'm going to do is I am going to create our client. We'll just quickly go ahead and set our endpoint. I like what
Let me know if
IntelliSense does in VS Code. It's just giving me hints already. Although I believe for this one, I know we're using AppWrite Cloud, so I will make a quick edit there.
let me know
But
if you want to
also,
switch to mine, Aditya, if you unless you're specifically showing something. Because on my
so
stuff
that's
is ready
good.
whenever.
There is one thing that I'm going to do differently from yours, though.
Sure, awesome.
Right. So for our database, particularly, I know that you directly gone ahead and created functions within the component, if I'm not wrong.
Correct.
I am going to maintain a separate I'll maintain a separation for that. And
Smart.
what I'll do is similar to how we've got the AppWrite client set up within our lib folder, I will have a separate databases folder for this as well, where I will import our database uh, object that we have here, and I will use that to create our function. So I'm going to quickly create them. Of course, as you need to go ahead, that's totally all right. I'll have them pre-prepared. But this actually will make things a lot more convenient as we go forward because for a couple of our functions, we will see usage within load functions within SvelteKit. I will be showcasing the use of those instead of the on mount functions because that's an alternative way to do things. And SvelteKit's pretty smart. They've allowed load functions on the client side as well. So these aren't server exclusive functions for us.
Got it. Okay.
So I'm
Yeah.
going to get my database stuff set up in the meantime quickly, and we
Sweet.
can
Let's
go
move over there.
forward. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I'll do that right now. Let me jump to mine then. And Aditya's right. The whole separation, typically it'd probably be better to create like a client instance for, or like a client interface for AppWrite when I'm making these requests, to separate the functions away from the actual component. In this case, we're just doing it directly in. So you're making me look bad, Aditya, but I'll live with it. So I made some imports, by the way. I did import meta, and then I think I did Vite right here. It's supposed to be env. So I was tapping into this file correctly. But now we make the request, we get the response, and then when we console this out, now we see the total. So if I should be able to zoom in on this. Yeah, so we see the total, and then we actually see the actual documents. So this is what we're getting from our database, and this is what we're about to access. So I'm going to update my state, render this out, and then we'll style this really quick. And let me just separate them like this so it looks cleaner. Okay, so we update set notes, which means that once set notes is updated, this right here will re-render. So I'm going to go ahead and create a div for this. We're going to wrap it all inside of a div, and we're just going to iterate through them. So we'll do, what did I click? I clicked F11. Okay, so we're going through notes, and we'll do notes.map. We'll get each individual note. We'll create that loop. In here, we'll create the div for each individual note. Now, in React, in order for the DOM to update the way that it needs to update, we need an individual key for each component. And this needs to be completely unique. I know some people use the index. There's issues with that because if you're adding items and removing them, that index can cause, or that can cause duplicate indexes. So it's better to use something like the note ID, something that will be truly unique to each individual note. So that's where I'm going to grab the note ID. And I guess I did console that out in a second, but this is how you access the object ID from AppWrite. And then we can simply just output the note body. So just add in a paragraph tag and we'll say note, actually we'll do title, note.title. So here are the notes. So we see the notes output. And what I'm going to do is go ahead and style this, and then we'll actually output the individual note detail page. So moving to this GitHub repo, this is public. So if anybody's following along, I'll share this in the video description. So after the fact, once this is posted, you'll be able to use this. I'm going to grab all the CSS from this GitHub repo. We're going to copy this, and then we're going to use the same HTML elements and add in the same class names and such. So we'll copy all of that. We'll bring that into app.css. That should change our styling to the page. So now it's dark. And then if I go into the notes page here, we'll go into, let's see. No, not note.html, index.html. Here is the styling for the individual note. So let's see. I'm just going to grab one of these and change the content here. So with React, we use React Router DOM to actually handle linking to other pages. So with our page router, instead of using an href like we're going to see right here from this demo, what I'm going to do is go ahead and update these. So let's remove this entire div right here that we just rendered out. And we're going to import link. So import link from React Router DOM. And then this will help us use React Router to actually link to pages. So this will now be link instead of an href. And we're going to change href to 2. So that's going to help us with our page routing. And then this dynamic route, we're going to use the note value. So /note. And then we'll pass in the actual note ID. So note ID like that. So this is how we can actually link to every single specific note with React. And for this, for class, we're just going to change that to class name with React. Class is a reserved keyword in JavaScript, so we need to use class name. And let's indent this a little bit more. And for the actual date here, we're going to take care of these in a second. So I'll leave it like that, but this is where we'll actually output the note itself. So the note.title, and let's take a look. Okay, so that looks a little bit better, but we also want to add a container around this. So inside of our template here, we'll notice that there's this class container. We're going to grab that from this file, and that needs to be wrapped inside of our app.jsx file. And I can put that before my routes. So I'm going to create a div here. Give it the class of container. And let's close this off. So we're basically creating a layout, Aditya, just like what you did. But I'm not actually going to create a layout component. I'm just going to go ahead and wrap it here because that's the parent element to all those. So that looks a little bit better. And then the last thing I'm going to do is just go ahead and add a header here. So we'll steal that real quick. We'll take this entire header. And I'm going to create a component within React. So we didn't talk about that yet. So a page component is something we can just insert into a page. We technically did that with our pages right here as we brought those in, but I'm going to separate this in the source folder. I'm going to create a folder called components, and we'll call this header.jsx. We'll use that shortcut, React arrow function component exported, and I'm going to paste this in here. So we have our header. This link right here needs to be the link component from React Router DOM. So change that and then change this to 2. And then we want to send this one right here to the ad page. And that also needs to be link. And that does it for our header. Now to bring this in, I'm also just going to bring this in directly in here. We'll bring this outside of the container. Import header. I don't know why it did it like that. For some reason, it's not auto importing. Components and then header. Let's see what I did wrong here. All right, that worked. I don't know why I didn't import, but now this takes us to the add page. And then the last step here, Aditya, before we jump to you, is when we click on an individual note, we're going to click on these, and it's going to take us to the note page. So you'll see the ID. I don't know, I guess if you can't see it right now with the Zoom, but there's the ID in the URL. So that's how we're dynamically using that. This is real data from a real database. Okay. And really fast, I'm just going to grab this information in the note page. So in here, we're going to use effect. We'll need to import this. And then we'll also import use state. So once a note is rendered out, or once this page is called, inside of this dependency array, we want the actual use effect method to be called anytime the ID changes. So what I'm going to do here is in the dependency array is I'm going to make sure that the ID value is dependent on that. So that way it actually updates properly. And then in here, we'll just create a function called get note. And this part should be pretty quick. Just kind of power through it since we've seen this cycle here. We'll get the response. And this will be await. And we need to import from React or from AppWrite. So we'll import the database, the collection, and then the database ID. And then we can call db.getDocument, and we're going to get this document by ID, which means we need to get the specific database. We're tapping into this database, and then the collection. And then the last value is going to be the actual note ID, which we can get from the parameter. So we're getting that URL parameter, and then we're going to request that note. And then the last step is going to be to update this note, which we can use in a state, or we can set some state here. So this will be note, and then set note. So before it loads, this value will be null, like that. And then we're going to update it right here. And I need to use a linter for this to clean up this process, but we'll get that later. Okay, so we call get note anytime a note page is triggered. So anytime we render this page, we call get note. We set the note. That's going to be the response value. So we set our state, and then we just simply render this out right here. And give me a second. I'm going to use a reference that I have here. So in here for the actual note, we're going to grab from our template, we need to grab the actual note page. So note.html. We'll grab this entire page, and we can bring that in right here. And these just need to be changed to class name. And then the note title and note body. And we'll change the dates later if we have time to get to that and actually format those. So this will be note body. And one of the things that I need to make sure is that before this page actually gets called, we're going to get an error because we don't have a note, but yet we're referencing it on first load. So if we try to actually go to the page, we're going to see an issue because we're trying to request that note. So what I'm going to do is render out my component conditionally. So before, let's see. Actually, I'm not sure if we're running into that issue. Let me just add in the condition real quick. So we're going to check if we have a note. So we're going to say if not note. Let's go ahead and return a loading screen. Actually, we'll just add in a paragraph tag and we'll say loading, and that's it. So that should ensure that we actually get the note. And it looks like we have a bug here. So let me fix this real quick. Location not matched. I think what's happening is I'm linking to the page incorrectly. And I think it's because I added notes right there. Okay, I see the loading screen and then the note. Why is the link not working though? Okay, we'll set that key in a second. Oh, okay. So what I need to do here is when we're rendering this out, I added the key and then I copied and pasted some stuff. We just need to pass in the note ID right here. And then when I click on it, There we go. Awesome. So everything's working. And now we have the note detail page. And yeah, that's it. So we got the data. We added some styling. That took a little bit of time just because we had to do some prep work here. We also set up our backend. So considering all things, that was actually relatively quick. So now we're ready to see all the Svelte side of things.
Cool.
All right, you're going to be on stage. You ready for your screen?
Absolutely.
Awesome. There we go.
All right. So while, of course, you were showcasing how you set up that entire component, I've done a few steps in the meantime. I do have my databases functions ready. So I have a function for adding a note, listing all our notes, and getting an individual note, which we will be seeing over, of course, um, as you know, as we proceed with our stream right now as well. So the first thing that I'm going to do before anything else, I've also copied over our CSS here, and I'm going to import this in our layout so that we can leverage a consistent style here for us as well. And that's going to be fairly simple. We're just going to go ahead and, use the CSS file. Doing that much is good enough. An additional step that I do want to make in our layout here is adding our header component. I do want to just get that out of the way quickly while we're at this. So I'm going to go ahead and create our components folder as well.
It's perfect. I actually wanted to see that. So I wanted to see how those are built and imported.
Yeah. So I'll also call the file header. It'll be a header.svelte file that we have. Here's the fun thing that we're going to have now, though. The cool thing here with Svelte is when you're writing, I am basically writing HTML. If you write standard HTML, JavaScript, CSS, that actually works well enough. Svelte that way is a very unopinionated library. So I kind of like that a lot because if you know, for me or anyone else here who comes from having just learned HTML, CSS, JavaScript, vanilla, it is very, very easy to transition into the Svelte ecosystem. It does take away a lot of the, well, um, learning curve. It does simplify the learning curve a lot.
And that
So I
answers the
created,
question perfectly too.
yeah,
Sorry, I just want to point that out, and I wanted to highlight that because React has a completely different way of how it handles things, and Svelte just looks so native, which is why when you're looking at it, you know, you're right. You're looking at React,
yeah,
and it's like this entirely new thing. And you know, once you get to know it, it's pretty easy to understand. But Svelte
true.
looks like what a typical web developer would understand because that's how web pages are built. Where React kind of changed up, you know, the approach quite a bit. But yeah, keep asking questions. By the way, we love it. I'll be watching the
That was
chat.
actually a great question there.
Yeah,
I think it's a good reason, you know, especially when we're comparing it, something that always stands out. I think it's a part of why I was attracted to learn Svelte and SvelteKit first as well, aside from just the fact that we use it at app, right? But additionally, I think it's just it felt like a little more comfortable just coming from vanilla HTML and CSS.
right.
If I do need to import this header, by the way, so all I'm going to do is I'll import the Svelte component directly. I'm doing this in my layout. So because I've imported it already, all I need to do is mention our header here. And if I go back to what happened there,
Welcome to live streaming.
not an SSR component.
I think
Let
you
me.
need to set it as. Didn't you say you need to set CSR to every component?
So, I mean, this was in the main layout itself.
So just to clarify, you have to do this right here. So export cons CSR true into every single page and every single component with
So,
SvelteKit
because
only.
it's done in the layout at
Okay,
the top here, I'm not going to need to do this again and again and again. This is not going to be necessary going forward.
I see.
We do this once in the parent layout.
Right, because it all goes,
and we're good
yeah,
to go.
inherits it.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
So we're not going to need to do this again and again.
I love this because when I come out with my video, I'm gonna do like a 5 minute, 7 minute, Svelte versus React video, and I'm
Mhm.
rewatching this. I'll mention this stream, and I'm fully learning. So this is actually perfect content. So I'm really just getting information for myself for my next
Awesome.
video. And if you want to see that, by the way,
Yeah.
subscribe to the App Right YouTube channel and please like this video because it really helps us out a lot. So show us some support. We'd love it.
I'm actually confused about one little thing here as to why um, we didn't see that. We didn't see my page load up. Huh.
Oh, you
That
didn't
is.
export the header. Do you have to export that? Because in React, you have to export each component. It looks like you forgot to export it.
So normally that's not something which is necessary. But if you can just give me a
Sure.
second.
I'll entertain. Yeah, let me know. I'll
Yeah.
chat. We need you jumping in. Let's see. Where's everyone from? Let's say
If
hello.
someone, and by the way, if someone catches by what I did wrong, that's even better. Um, yeah. So just make sure you let us know as soon as that comes up. But let me just go ahead and double check because I actually did end up preparing this application well in advance. So I should have my own notes to review as well as to why that didn't work out. That shouldn't actually be a problem though, if I'm honest. But yeah, let's see what went wrong.
I love it. I love it. They're
So
annoying to deal with, but sometimes I'll watch my own streams. I'm like, oh, that's actually a pretty good debugging process. Pat myself on the shoulder for fixing things.
yeah, yeah. Hmm. So the funny thing here is that I actually did not do a lot different just from what it really is. The only things the way I designed this component initially was I just had
Can I?
a
You have your
button
header is
thing.
lowercase, Aditya. Does that make a difference? You're importing it with a capital H, but header here is lowercase.
It particularly should not,
Okay.
but
Because it says you
yeah.
have a named export header and it's showing it as capitalized.
I tell you what, let me just quickly do one thing and double verify as to just to make sure it's not an issue with my own setup as well. I'm gonna go ahead, quickly remove this, um, and just make sure that the header itself is loading. If it's an issue with importing, that's something we can sort out later. So it is importing. Then in that case, it's a little funny. This ideally should not be coming up. The problem that I am facing here because I have it tried and tested on the application.
So when so the import, it seems like the issue is the import, not the actual code, right? So like if you were to completely remove everything inside of the code here, it still doesn't work.
Mhm.
Like if you import like a clean component.
That might be true. It's just that export shouldn't be the way it is. Um, but I'll tell you what, I'm just gonna remove this in the meantime, just for now, and I'll debug it
Sure.
in a short bit. In the meantime, though, because we have the header working and running here, so what I'm gonna do is I will steal a few things away from this component. We'll debug this later. It's not a problem. I'll just remove this for now and add it to our layout. So what I've done here is I've just written the same header in a slightly different manner. I did keep a header um, HTML tag there, uh, force of habit particularly, but and it's just semantic HTML that I try to follow from time to time. But other than that, for redirection to our add endpoint, I'm actually using the goto function, which is available as a part of Svelte's navigation libraries. And this lets you programmatically navigate to other endpoints within the application as well.
Okay.
So that all this particularly is doing. So if I just click on add, it'll take me to a different endpoint that I have here.
So it helps with page routing with Svelte, and goto is how you would use it inside of your JavaScript. But if you're using it within like your template, it's a standard just an A tag.
Yeah, you exactly. You can also use an A tag if need be. Goto particularly for JavaScript. The only thing is, Goto is specifically a client-side only function. If you have it on a server-side function, it's not going to work. It's going to throw errors.
I see.
So that is one particular thing that we've got.
Okay, I'm just looking at the message. I'm not sure. Did you add task icon? I'm not sure if that's
I
relevant.
don't believe I have add task icon there, but okay. I think I figured out what went wrong.
By the way, if you need help debugging, or if you need time to debug, let me jump into my part. I can always navigate away, so I don't want to put that pressure on you. I totally get it. And then once you find
totally okay. You're gonna laugh at what I did wrong.
This is literally my favorite. That people love seeing this.
See, it shows. I think this is authentic coding. Forget live coding. I think when you're actually coding, you're gonna make a few mistakes. It's just valid. You need it to happen. I think it wouldn't feel natural without it. But so if I just quickly remove these and I bring back header as we have it, the only mistake that this actually really has is that I didn't need these.
Oh, you had it as a named export instead of a default. I mean,
that fixed it. That literally fixed it. So that's the only thing that went wrong there. I think I'm just used to importing my JavaScript files and my constants exported from those. We just had to import the entire component there, and that was good enough.
But it would work as a named export if you needed it to, right? Like you could make it a named export if you needed it to, right? From header. Like let's say you decided, hey, I want to only do named exports. Could you do that?
Yeah. You could do that. That's valid for sure. Only in this particular case, since we were importing the entire component, that was just not needed. But okay.
I see.
It's working.
Awesome.
So I'm going to do a quick little thing here. Now that we're okay to actually build some of these things out, I'm going to start off by going into my page.js companion for the index page, because that's where we're going to be loading all the notes, right? So I'm going to create a load function here, which we call, load. I'm not going to need any parameters this time. But what we will do is we will, I'll just create a little variable for us. And we will be getting our list from the database library that I set up. So I'm going to go ahead and we will import this from our, we just need to import this from our databases. The export we have here, because I've imported this in now. We can use the list function and I can return this to my page as I'd shown earlier. So if I go ahead and I return this list of documents, I will return list of documents directly because we only really need our list of documents right now. This is now going to be accessible within our page.
Hold on. So did you just create your own method? I didn't catch that.
Sorry?
Did you create your own method list? I didn't catch that.
Oh, yeah. So that was created when I created my database function there.
I see. Okay. Very smart, by the way. That makes sense. Okay.
So this is just a list documents called, it's just a call to a list documents endpoint. similarly, I have a get call to get a single note by ID and to add a note. These have been created and prepared already.
Got it. It just makes it a lot cleaner if you're abstracting this away and then using it later on. That makes perfect
That
sense.
is true. It definitely makes life a little easier there. Um, yeah. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna create. Well, we do want to present these and show these within um, the page as well. So fortunately for us, Svelte also allows us to loop through a list of documents and use those.
This is the only
So I'm
thing that I
gonna
didn't like about Svelte code is I didn't like how it looks. Like it just kind of looks messy to me. I think this is one thing React gets a little bit better. It's a small thing to pick at, but I don't know.
I will say I think if I'm honest, or from a learner's perspective, I like that it feels a little more verbose through this experience.
Mhm.
And because the more verbose it is, I think the easier it is to kind of catch what's going on.
I can see
That,
that.
if I'm honest, it's gonna go very off topic, but it's a reason why I always preferred Java when I started learning how to program back in high school. This is going to be a very controversial statement. I think someone's going to call this out later on as to why I like Java. It's true. It's true. I did have this component prepared. So what I'm going to do here is similar to what you had done. For each node, it's going to we'll get a little um, we'll create our card here. It is going to use the ID as the slug. That is what I'm setting as the slug later, which will be quite helpful, especially because we need to make get calls for the individual page later on as well. We have the card, and I did actually have a little setup to showcase the date on the note as well. So I'm going to quickly add that here. If someone has concerns about the logic, it's effectively the exact same thing that Dennis had done earlier within the React application. The only thing is that I've ported it over for Svelte. But what we're doing is we've created our design for each little note. Um, we will have a little card for them. It will show the date in a nicer manner and the title. So when we do actually go ahead and look at this application here, it renders a little, a card for each of these nodes. Now, if I click on this, we were just gonna get that old note with the slug because that's the only thing present within that route right now. But it loads all of our documents, and we're just showing the title and the date when it was created here. Now, the simple thing that we've done here is, just the way we've got our list of documents, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the note page.js, and we're going to use this slug here to return our document. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to replace this note. We will actually have to add an import for the database library here as well.
I got a kind of a silly question because it clearly is because I wasn't paying attention. But
Mhm.
you're writing external JavaScript for your page.svelte file in page.js. Is that just another way to abstract it, or is this?
So the page.js acts as a companion to the page.svelte. Now, if I was making these calls after mounting the DOM, I would do that within the Svelte page itself. And the way you've used use effect, I definitely use on mount calls there, but I can also use React statements, and there's a few different things that can happen.
Mhm.
What page.js allows me to do is it lets me get this data before the page is rendered. And so when we open that page, it opens with this rendered data already,
So
which
it's basically like a pre-mount function.
essentially. Now, this does have a lot of benefits from the perspective of SSR, but the good thing about SvelteKit is the page.js file can be rendered both server side as well as run on the client side if you're running a fully CSR application.
Got it.
Um,
It's
you do have page.server.js as an alternative, which is only used for server side functionality, but the page.js code does run on the client. So we can actually pre render this information here. I do
you
need
do
to mark
realize
this load function as asynchronous, but with that, what we can now do is we can get the same data and we can now render our node in here. So if I do need to render that right now, I just need my export, of course. But also, what I'm gonna do is actually let me just bring over that same HTML. One thing I love about Svelte particularly that I cannot emphasize on again and again is that it feels so similar to just regular HTML. Most of it actually just is that. In fact, if I did not have all of these mentions, if it was just static information and I just paste this in an HTML file, it would work. Svelte files would just be usable like that. So all we're doing here, as seen earlier, is that I've got my note from our function here, right? I'm getting it from our load function. So I'm only loading the title, the date information, and the description, but I do need to change this to body. When I was playing around, I think I used a different a different attribute for that, but essentially it's going to do the same thing as you showed already. It will just render our title, the node body, and the date on which it was created on our page. So now when I go ahead and click on this, it gives an
oh, I
error.
was gonna do a drum roll and then you got an internal 500 error.
And I do want to see exactly what happened here.
Unexpected bracket. Let's see.
Hmm.
I
Did
didn't
I
catch
add
anything.
an unexpected bracket somewhere? Oh,
Yeah.
I hope
And
that fixes it.
nope.
Params is
Params.
not defined.
Come
Am I
on.
using params? I did actually have to use params, so that did need to remain as we'd seen earlier.
And
That does it.
there we go. Nice. Looking
I,
good.
I'm going to be honest. I enjoy imperfections in live coding. I feel like it feels real. So
100%. Yeah, an edited video that's an hour long takes about 5 hours to shoot. So, when you're live,
yeah,
you can at least see those hiccups and
that's true. That's
everything
true.
that goes in this process. Yeah, I think that does it for your side, right? So you have your header, you have
We've done.
your notes, rendered them out. You even added the date, which I didn't do yet, and that pretty much
Ah.
completes it. Oh, you almost exposed your environment variables.
Oh no, that's just the example. I have my
Oh, I
environment
see.
shut. I maintained an example file because I know I'm going to end up going over it at some point of time.
Got it. Okay, so you imported
So
those. We have a
yeah,
Aditya Kumar asking about authentication. We won't go into that right now. I do have some React auth videos coming out. I'll pick Aditya's brain about doing this in Svelte. I'll get some information from him, but we're probably going to keep it shorter, or keep the video shorter here just to make sure that we have the core information. And on my end, I mean, we have all the React stuff ready to go. What I'll do is, Aditya, make sure you keep the code. Let's post this in the video description. Let's link this up. And
absolutely.
yeah, while we're doing this, if anybody has questions in the chat, let's do that. Let me pour it over to my side and let me just fix up my dates just so it looks good, once we actually post it here. So like right now in my application, just jump to my end. I have these values hard coded. So we have the,
Gotcha.
yeah. So what I did actually for that, the function Aditya used here was, I think I might have to reference that from an example that's inside of notes here. So if we do something like date dot created, I think it's created at, is that correct?
So it'll be dollar created at.
Right, there we go.
Yeah, but so I just created a date object and converted that to a date string.
Got it.
I can send that to you.
I have the, wait, hold on. You didn't use the function that I set up? No?
So I used that function particularly when I was loading the when I was loading the list of notes, but just to get the year as well, and the day, the month,
Oh, I see.
the
Well,
date, and that entire format.
I,
I used a different function within the note pages individually.
I see. Okay. Well, for simplicity, I'm going to stick to this one for now, Aditya, since they already have the example in yours. Basically, all I did was create a function here that lists out the not the initials, but the first couple of letters from each date. So Sunday through Saturday, we pass in the date. Here we get the actual day of the week and then day of the month. And then so we see how it's ugly right here. We have this format, or it's unformatted. We want to go ahead and fix that. So we're simply just going to call this function and pass this into get date, which should give us, we see Wednesday the 20th. Okay, something looks off here. Maybe I'm using it wrong. Oh, I see what's happening. Okay, so I'm returning an array. So I return the day of the week and then the day of the month. So we want to get the day of the week first, which means we're just going to go ahead and get the 0 index and then the 1 index.
The 1. Yeah.
And that should make it look better. Perfect. So unfortunately, I can't update those right now, but I just want to have like more variations. So it's all Wednesday the 20th, which is today, for me at least. And then if we go to an individual page, we'll just leave it like that. Did I format that? I don't remember formatting that. Oh, that was in my, that's hard coded. Okay. So we can just,
I sent you a little snippet as to how, if you want to just clean that up quickly, how you can do that. I've DM'd you.
Yeah,
if you want to take a look at that.
I'll do that. Yeah, I'll open up our Discord DM. I just want to hide my screen just in case it opens up here.
Yeah.
I never want to.
I mean, if you want, in the meantime, I can start showing how we can build out the ad form as well.
Oh, right. We still have that. Do you still have time to get to that?
I'm good. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's do it. Okay. So we have our date. So new date and then just today's string. Okay. And then that looks better. So now that's actually today's date. So Aditya, while you start setting that up, so what we're doing is we're moving into add here. I still need to add in the template. So while you're doing that, I'll add the template in on my side as well. And then we'll add in that process of creating it. Meanwhile, I'm going to pop out for like 30 seconds. I just got to use the restroom real quick. I've been drinking coffee and water. So
do you want to switch screens to mine in the meantime? Then
yes.
I'll just get started with this.
All yours.
Okay. So now that, of course, we've looked at getting our list of notes and getting an individual note, we also want to be able to add a note with this application. So for that, we created a new route add, where I've gone ahead and added another page.svelte file. Now with this one, we're not loading any data, so we don't need a companion file at the moment. What I am going to do here is paste a template for the form that we want to be using. So I have a template here. We're going to have this form. It has 2 fields, particularly it's got our title, which we've been seeing already. It's also got our description field, and then we have a submit button. Now I did add an on submit function here already, and we're going to start writing a little bit of that now. So when I create this particular forms, wow, that was fast. Never mind that. We will create this manually. Then we're okay doing that. So when we create this particular function, what we want to be doing here is we want to get back this information available in the title and the description fields. We want to use the database library here again, because we are going to be adding information from there. And, we'll be using that. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to import the database library now. Once again, I think this has been a consistent feature at this point, but that's all right. So I have no idea why it showed 5 ways there, but yeah, that's one thing we're not using at the moment.
I was going to say, you're on thin ice.
Elephant is a little wacky there. We don't need it to be that preemptive.
We're just trying to show that anybody can screw up. So,
okay, this is going to be wacky, but I think it did half my job for me. IntelliSense is nice. I like IntelliSense. I'm going to remove these, however, in the meantime, and instead, all I'll do here is I'll just add required to our input. Correct me if I'm wrong. Can required also be used with text areas? I believe it can, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, you can do required and read only. Yeah, that should work.
Should be good. Should be good. Um, cool. So what I'm doing here right now is I'm just getting I'm getting our form data within this function. We already talked about the submit function, and since we've got this function here, it's going to be triggered by the event, so we should be good on this front. And what I'll be doing additionally here is, of course, we wanna make a call to our database library. Use the add function I had there for the title and the body that we have. Let me do a rename, however. I did use description in my practice, so I'm just going to rename that to body for now. And once we've got that sorted out, we'll be able to use all of this information here. We will be able to just quickly add this to our database. So ideally, this should be okay. But I do want to add a couple of additional things. So one, I want to know when a note is added. So I'll just add a little alert for myself just to preempt me. And then one more thing we will do is an invalidate call. Now, an invalidate call may not look necessary on this particular page, but this is handy to know. It is quite handy on a number of other fronts, particularly where you also have load functions on the same page. The invalidate all will trigger any other load functions we have. This is lesser of a concern because it's a client side rendered app right now, but when you do have server side rendered applications, it is quite helpful in preemptively making sure any data needed is loaded. So I will keep this here because it is just a very helpful function to have later on. And it is available as a part of our navigation of SvelteKit's navigation library that we have. So ideally, once this is done, we should be good to go with the form. I'm going to go ahead and do a little test here for us. So,
Drum roll.
all right, I'm going to make a little CSS change before that because that was just a little difficult to read. Let me just quickly add a slightly different color to this. We'll just add white for now. But so if I title this as test note, and then the description for us is this is just a test note body, and I add this note. All right, we have our note, and if I go back, we can see a new note being created here,
Boom,
which
roasted.
should also be available for you, Dennis, on your application.
Yeah, let's actually test that real quick. Give me a second. So because we're ported into the same database, if I go to notes, there we go. We see test note 123. Awesome. Sweet.
Perfect.
Are we ready to jump to my side with React?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, you definitely put more detail into keeping your code clean, Aditya. I'm like, let's just get this thing done. Let's get to the point and then deal with cleaning it up later. So mine will be a little bit more messy. But
I mean, I did have the benefit of since we had the templates already. Yeah, I just made sure I was prepared for this before anything else.
Right. Yeah.
It's been a while since live coding live stream. Sorry, over to you.
Yeah, no worries, no worries. So on my end with the form, as we can see, we do have a form on add now. And again, this is all in that GitHub repo for anybody that wants to follow along, whether it's from mine or Aditya's. We copied and pasted that from there. We got the HTML, the styling's already there. So we just have a body around it or a wrapper, and then the actual form with each value. And then we have the names of title and body for the text area. And you're probably right. I probably should add required to these. Let me just throw those in just to make sure that we can't submit this without something. And
Yeah.
that shouldn't.
An additional note that I can probably throw in is that, and this is not necessary immediately, but for anyone in the chat, when you do use the database, you can also set the max length that you want to allow within each of these inputs, so it doesn't actually end up exceeding your your attribute limits on your AppWrite database either.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, let's do this. So within our form, again, I'm going to keep everything directly within the component. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use something called a ref. So there's a few ways we can handle forms in React. There's multiple or a lot of ways. So what I'm going to use is something called useRef. We're not going to use any external library or any fancy thing like that. A ref basically allows us to reference an HTML element. It makes this a lot easier. Another method we could do is do on key up events, Aditya. I'm sure maybe you've done those where as I'm typing in a value in here, I'm keeping the title and the body and state. I don't want to do that right now. All I'm going to do is simply on submit reference the form, just like you would do with regular JavaScript, where you'd grab the form values and then reference them. So in React, we have something called useRef. So we'll call form ref, we'll give it a name, and by default, useRef, the value here, I'm going to set to null, and then I add this to the form. So there's this attribute, because we're dealing with JSX here, there's an attribute called ref, and we're going to add in form ref. So once this is set, we can access all these values from here. Now, the next step here is to actually go ahead and handle that submit process. So when a form is submitted, we want to actually, first of all, stop the default behavior of the form, and then actually submit the data to our backend. So we'll do const handle submit. Submit. I gotta sound it out as I'm typing. Okay, so handle submit. Did I spell that right? Why does it look so weird? No, that's good. I think that's good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good, okay.
So first we'll prevent default. Then from here, we just want to import some stuff from our AppWrite config file. So we'll import DB and database ID and collection ID, because we need to know where we're sending that. And this is where Aditya's method is so much cleaner, because he abstracted these into functions that allows us to just call these methods without having to import an ID and a collection every single time. So much cleaner, props on that. So from here, we're going to do db.createDocument. This is where we'll pass in the database ID, then the collection ID, and we're creating a new note. So what I'm going to do here is import the ID class from AppWrite, and essentially we can generate our IDs in any way we want. So this is a new document. The last parameter, or the third parameter here, needs to be the actual ID that we're going to send in. So instead of creating some ID with a function that we're going to use or an external library, we can just call id.unique, and this will make sure that we get a new unique value for an ID for this element right here, or for this document. So AppWrite gives us a method that we can use for that. And then the last method is going to be the payload. Now, for this payload, this is where we're going to grab this form data. So as we're submitting this form, we have our two inputs. So we have our body and our title. And what I'm going to do, and I need to make sure I get this right. I need to get the title. And this is going to be form ref dot current dot value. So we need to get the current value of the form, because this gets changed. So we need to make sure we're grabbing that, and then we can do the same for body. And I think that that's the right way. Oh, form ref dot current dot title. So we're grabbing the title value. So it looks just a little bit different from how you would do this in raw JavaScript. And then this is going to be the body, and we need the body here. So that's how we use ref. We get these values, and then we simply pass in title and body. And then once we send that, what I'm going to do is just go ahead and add this into a try catch. Bring this up here. I'm not going to go through the fancy error handling that Aditya did. I'll just use an alert method here.
I like that you're doing error handling. I think that's I didn't catch it. Probably a good call.
Got it. Yeah. So you have your go-to method, I believe, in a Svelte, if I remember that right. Well, in React with React Router DOM, we have something called use navigate. It's a hook that we can bring in. So we first need to set it up, and I actually don't like that we have to do it this way. So we first create our own variable calling use navigate. We hook into it, and then after the form is created, if everything goes well, we just send a user back to this page. I guess we could redirect them back to the value they just created, but you can do it this way. So let's see, on handle submit now. So on submit, we're going to call handle submit, and it should be good here. So let's go ahead and give this a shot. Let's refresh it. And unlike Aditya, because he's so clean and proper, I'm just going to go to sleep on my keyboard. I'm not a patient person. Okay, so there we go. We see my values, and Aditya will see that. Now, just as a little trick here, what I could do is quickly just sort these. Now we're getting out of the scope here, but this should only take a second. If it takes longer, we'll stop right here. I believe it's query from AppWrite. Let's see. We import query. I have to try to remember this myself, but we can. Was it the last parameter? Yeah, this.
So after it'll be an array, I believe.
Yeah, so it's query. Yeah. Wait. Query dot or ascent order by order ascending. Am I calling that right? And we need to order it by created at with the dollar symbol.
Yeah, you need the dollar symbol. That's been a frequent mistake for me. I always have to remember it's a dollar symbol.
Yeah, so basically the rule is any built-in method with AppWrite starts with a dollar symbol, or any built-in attribute. Let's see, invalid method. What am I doing wrong here? We could here. Let's just. I want to look this up. It's going to bother me. So
I feel like I know what's happened. Can you show that error once again?
Let's see. Method order sending attribute created.
So I'll tell you what's going on there. I think we've got the latest version of the AppWrite SDK, which is for AppWrite 1.5. And we updated our querying style with 1.5, whereas Cloud is on 1.4 currently. So the function is not wrong, but because it's a newer version of the library, it's just going to send a slightly different request to AppWrite.
Got it. Okay. What would that change as far as the actual value, though?
What's going to happen is that it's got more to do with how the query is formed and sent to AppWrite. So it's just different from how our request style was. So you're not doing anything wrong. It will work with a different AppWrite library version. It's just with this particular version, you're going to see an error right now.
Got it.
But so if you were using this in AppWrite 1.5, it would work perfectly.
Then in that case, we will not focus on that for now. We'll leave it at that. I know well enough not to try to play with these things on a stream. Okay, so that's going to be it for now. Let's just quickly jump into the chat. Let's see what's going on, and then we will say our goodbyes. Every time Dennis says Aditya, and my brain takes time to reference. Am I saying it with an accent? Am I saying it wrong?
You're okay. I think it's not just you. It's half the people here as well who do the same thing. I know Nandini is a friend.
So say it how you would say it. Let me hear it.
I call it Aditya.
Aditya. Yeah, I can do that.
It's not wrong. You're saying it correctly. I hear it properly.
But I want to make sure.
Just when you say it quickly, and this isn't just specifically for you, it's with most people. When you say it quickly, it just sounds somewhere in the middle of Aditya and Aditya. So Aditya. It's nothing to do with you. It's just that's my name.
I'll say it correctly. The funny thing is I actually said it Aditya before. Aditya, I think, yeah. But I started hearing people emphasize like Aditya. So that's
Yeah, that's accent. That is accent.
Yeah, people do it to my wife all the time. It's Sulamita, but everyone calls her Sulamita. Like it's just the way that someone's tongue rolls. Yeah, It's more.
Yeah,
It's usually like it's more Americanized way to say it. So
that is
it
true.
depends on how someone's tongue works. Cool. Well, oh, we have a question about AppWrite 1.5. Aditya, what can Aditya? Okay, now you're messing with me. Aditya, what is it, or what can you say about this?
um,
Since you may have more insight than I have.
so I know that we do want to bring it out this month. That is the target and the goal so far. Christy is the one working on that front. So I will say if this is a request, the best place to discuss would be within the AppWrite Discord server. I can, I think I can share a link to that. Yes, I should be able to share a link to that. But it's just apprate.io/discord. And you can visit there and ask this particular question. Christy's there, the rest of the engineering team is available as well, so they can definitely help out.
And make sure to tag Christy. He loves it. Okay,
I
well,
did not say it. Dennis did. So if this leads to Christy being spammed, it was not on me.
so we'll answer this last question, and then
Mhm.
Aditya and I gotta go. So, what do you suggest for auth session management in Next.js? So with AppWrite 1.5, you can use it right now on self-hosted. Once it comes out on cloud, it's ready to go. There is a video on this channel about it, but you can use the create session method. So any method that creates a session now returns back a session object. So you can now store that in a session cookie yourself. And I actually go through a full tutorial on how to do that. So make sure to check that out. Just look up AppWrite SSR and you'll find the video. But there I show an actual Next.js example. I'll do full-fledged tutorials on that. But there I just protect some API routes with the session. But that's going to be it for us. Aditya, unless you have some closing thoughts, we can just go ahead and end it here.
Oh, I think this was quite insightful, if I'm honest. I haven't played around as much with React, so it was kind of good to see how to do the same stuff in a slightly different manner, a different syntax. And probably one thought that I will leave here is I know we always see that little competition come up as to which one's better or not. As a personal opinion, I think both React and Svelte are great. They're both two different tools to achieve certain goals, and as long as you've got a tool that gets you to the right outcome, you're good to go. So that's all it is, right? None of them are going down. I think they're both like, well, it's always amazing how all of these frameworks keep coming up and they all keep bettering each other because they're all showing new improvements, new changes, solving problems that might not have been solved earlier. So I think it's great that we've got both React and Svelte and frameworks like Vue, Angular, Solid, and well, it's JavaScript. So I'm gonna lose count at that point. But I think it's great, and I'm always excited to see what more happens in the space.
Yeah, I concur. I think it's just the tool that gets you there. As someone mentioned, Svelte just looks nice because it's native to you. And then there's people that try the React stuff and load features of that. So it's really up to you and your preference. But all right, well, thank you so much, Aditya. That's going to be it for us. Thank you, chat, for asking questions, for hanging out with us. This recording will be posted, or it's just going to be left up on YouTube. So it'll be indexed. And then when you search up React versus Svelte, hopefully this comes up. We'll see you all in the next stream, and give us a second as we try to close this out because sometimes it doesn't end right away.